Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Boundary. My name's Josh. It's great to have you for round 23, the last round of the season. Nick's with me again this week. Nick, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm great, Josh. How about yourself?
Yeah, very good, thanks, mate. Very good. And we've also got Vinay with us this week. He's been doing a bit of commentary for us and a bit of live Q&A. He's replacing Maddie this week. Vinay, how are you, mate? Good to have you on board.
Good, thanks, Josh. Yeah, glad to be here, mate.
Good to hear. Boys, it was a big week in footy to quote Eddie Maguire off the Footy Show. The Bombers finally got their sanctions handed down to them. It was a big week on the field. The Bombers got up surprisingly. The Sydney Swans were walloped by your boys, Nick, Geelong.
They certainly were.
And St Kilda maybe surprised a few people as well, giving the Gold Coast Suns a bit of a hiding as well. Nick, how was your week, mate?
Yeah, it was a good one, actually. 7 out of 9 tips this week, which I've actually lost my lead in the tipping, so I'm not happy about that, even with one of my co-workers. So we'll see how we go this week. But yeah, otherwise good. Really enjoyed the Geelong game down at Simmons Stadium. I was there as always, and a great win over the Swans.
Now, we should mention Vinay's a West Coast fan. Vinay, how was your week, mate?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it, Josh. No, but look, it started off pretty poor. Obviously, West Coast went down by a sizable amount to the Magpies, but like you said, it was an interesting week. Bombers finally got their sanctions. Went to the Essendon game. That was a really great game to be at. It was good to see Essendon really show some spirit, and it was a great game. I finished up with 8 out of 9 tips this week. I fell for the Gold Coast trap, which I think a few of us might have, but
Probably most people, yeah.
Yeah. So, but apart from that, yeah, going pretty well. I think interesting week ahead of us.
Absolutely. It's all of a sudden with Essendon losing their spot in the top 8, it all of a sudden becomes very, very interesting this round. And we'll go through the predictions a little bit later in the podcast and the outcomes that could possibly happen at the end of this week. Boys, what surprised us in round 22?
Well, we mentioned it just before. The St Kilda Gold Coast game was the big surprise for me. Almost everyone that I knew of anyway was jumping on Gold Coast. You know, I said it last week. I just couldn't bring myself to tip St Kilda against a team that was above them on the ladder. You know, two wins for the season before the win over Gold Coast. So very surprising that they got up there.
Vinay, what about yourself, mate? What surprised you?
Mine's a bit left field, but I think most people could agree. The Western Bulldogs have not only surprised me this week, but they just keep surprising me over and over again. For a team that finished 15th on the ladder last year, they've come out and they've really shown some character. I think against Brisbane, obviously they went down, but a massive last quarter, kicked 5 goals and almost got away with it as well. Lucky for Brisbane, they managed to kick just the goal to maintain their lead. But yeah, the Bulldogs, I think they've got some real talent coming through the ranks. They looked really dead last year with no run, but tell you what, Tom Liberatore, I should say, Tory Dixon, I'm really excited to see how they go in the future.
Just really quickly on that Western Bulldogs Brisbane game, it was almost identical to the Geelong Brisbane game with the roles reversed. You know, Brisbane led by 58 points, I think, on one stage, and then Western Bulldogs came storming home and almost got over the line in the end.
Yeah, and they've done that a few times this year as well, the Bulldogs. It's a testament to their fitness, I think. It's really improved from last year. It's Brisbane at the Gabba. It's not as easy as a proposition as it may sound this year, but full credit to the Bulldogs. They really fought in a circumstance where really they didn't have much support up there, so good on them. Hope they keep surprising me.
What surprised you, Josh?
Yeah, there was a few things, but I can't go past my boys on Saturday night. I foolishly and ashamedly, if that's even a word, tipped Carlton by 54 points last Saturday night, and for the Bombers to come out and win by 6 points, knowing that this week we would probably lose our spot in the top 8, beating Carlton, coming from behind is good, just as good as a finals win. So hopefully we get a big crowd to the Richmond game this week. I'd hate to see a very poor crowd with Essendon fans not turning up, knowing that the game essentially means nothing. So Hopefully, a big crowd still turns out. But boys, we'll move on.
So moving on, I know we've talked about it. Everyone's talked about it. Not many people like hearing about it at this stage of the season, but we have to touch on it. The Essendon saga. Josh, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as I said just before, it was always going to happen, and unfortunately, it was confirmed on Tuesday night that the Bombers would lose their spot in the finals. James Hird suspended for 12 months. Danny Corcoran 4 months. Bomber Thompson was fined $30,000, and the Bombers lost their first two draft picks in this year's draft and next season's draft, despite getting a pick at the end of round one and round two next year. I don't know how that makes sense, but that's the penalty that's been handed down, and it's probably fair enough, really. The Bombers had to be punished in some way, and unfortunately, that was the way that the commission saw it.
I think a lot of people, and I definitely don't agree with them. I've seen them come out on social media, mainly saying, the Bombers got off, but that's definitely not the case. And Terry Wallace on Twitter last night summed it up perfectly. He said, "For those who believe the sanctions are not tough, their lost selections in the draft would deliver any player in the AFL, including Buddy." And that really sums it up. How big this penalty is on the Essendon Football Club.
I think to be honest, the draft picks as a supporter hurt the most because that hurts you down the track. The loss of finals experience is is a loss, of course, but personally, I don't think Essendon could have won the premiership this year, and I had my doubts whether they go past week one anyway. So, um, and come to think about it, I wrote an article as soon as the sanctions were handed down, and I went through our list on the laptop I've got, and we've got a very good core group of players 25 years and under. I'll just reel a few names off for you that are under that 25 years and under. You got David Zaharakis, who's the best and fairest winner. Jake Carlisle, Dyson Heppel, Courtney Dempsey's only just turned 25. So there's four players along, many more that I can't name off the top of my head because I haven't got the article in front of me. But a very good core group of young developing players come through, and I just think with the likes of Jed Clothier, who comes in next year through the New South Wales scholarship, it still does hurt, but I don't think it'll hurt us as much as what it would hurt other sides. Vinay, what's your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good sum up, actually. Look, call me Sam Newman because I'm a big Essendon advocate, but I've liked the way that James Hird has handled himself throughout the proceedings. I read today that James Hird's lawyer actually came out and said that if he had proceeded with his case against the AFL, it likely would have succeeded. So I think that's a bit of a testament to the character of the man, the fact that he's just willing to sort of cop it on the chin. He knows that he's done wrong and he just wants to like limit the impact it has, the lasting impact. As Josh mentioned, Essendon, although the loss of draft picks will hurt them, they do have a relatively young list. Guys like Heppel, I think Michael Hibberd, Jackson Merritt, Lockie Dalglish's looked very good to say the least. Joe Danaher has shown quite a bit. They've already got quite a young playing group. So I obviously it's going to hurt them, but fortunately for them, due to the sort of youth that they have, and not only youth, but their youth also play with a maturity that seems to speak beyond their actual years. I speak about guys like Dyson Heppel and Michael Hibberd who've come out this year and really sort of taken command when Joe Watson wasn't around. And that's, again, really speaks about the character of the club in general. I'd love to see how Essendon respond this week against Richmond. I personally will be tipping them just because I think the Essendon Football Club has a lot of spirit, and I can definitely see that spirit coming out this week against Richmond. So although it appears that they have nothing to play for, I feel that they personally, every single one of them does have something to play for. And I'd love to see them come out and show Richmond what it's all about.
Just before we move on, guys, I've got that article up in front of me that I wrote, and the names that are in front of me right now scream heaps of talent. As I said, Jake Carlisle, David Zaharakis, Michael Hibberd, Stuart Cramery, Tom Bell Chambers, Jake Melksham, who's having a very good season, Michael Hurley, Dyson Heppel, David Myers, Cale Hooker, Patrick Ryder, Nick Comer, and Ben Howlett, all at 25 years or under.
That's almost
Uh,
half their side.
Almost half their side and pretty regular features of the Essendon Best 22 on game day. So I'm not sure the picks would hurt us in the short term, maybe in the longer term, but we'll have to wait and see.
Moving on now, we've said most of what can be said on the Essendon saga, you'd have to say. This week's rising star is the excitement machine, Brodie Grundy. I know. Well, you guys both know I'm a big fan of him, and most people are. What are you guys' thoughts on him?
Yeah, Vinay, I'm a big fan of him as well, just not as big a fan as Damien Barrett likes him. For those that missed it, Damien Barrett called him a all-time great already
Twice.
twice. But he's happy to put the old pill bag on the line. So yeah, he's a terrific young talent and deservedly became the round 22 NAB Rising Star this week after his game against the West Coast Eagles. Collingwood coach Nathan Buckley has said already that he is Collingwood's number one ruckman heading into a final series, which is a big mantle for the young fella to take on. But he'll get Darren Jolly back in the side to give him a bit of a chop out. And if he can have a similar impact in the finals than what he's had in his first few games, Collingwood certainly do have a very good footballer on their hands.
And next up, there was some more retirements during the week. Actually, some players calling an end to their careers at this late stage of the season. Stephen Milne, Justin Kosicki, Jason Blake, Jude Bolton, and Andrew Embley confirmed he wasn't official as of yet.
Yeah, Vinay, we'll let you kick it off, mate, with Andrew Embley, one of your boys. What's your fondest memories of him?
Oh, probably back in the Judd era. That was just superb watching him, Embley, Kerr. They were just all so dominant back then. Andrew Embley, he's just a spectacular player, it must be said. He's, as of recent, he's obviously just sort of petered out. He hasn't had as much of an impact. He's won the sub-best quite a lot. He's had a few injuries along the way. But whenever he comes on, there's always a massive cheer that goes around Patterson's. The crowd love him down there, and the playing group really, really value him. You see most of the interviews with the players, they'll always say that guys like Embley have been a massive influence on their own career. So he's not just a guy that's had a good influence on the field, but he's just been an excellent sort of leader off the field as well. It's unfortunate that his last season sort of just amounted to just him coming on and going off as the sub most of the time. But look, he's had a stellar career, and hopefully people will remember him for that. So congratulations to Andrew on a great career.
And some three favourites. Sorry, Josh. Three favourites of the St Kilda faithful. There are Stephen Milne, Justin Kosicki, and Jason Blake.
Yeah, I want to touch on Stephen Milne mainly here. Justin Kosicki and Jason Blake have been terrific servants of that football club, and Kosicki will play his 200th game this week, all going well. Stephen Milne is not very well liked around the competition, just for his antics on the field, and unfortunately his off-field antics that people seem to think they know everything about, but mostly for his on-field antics. He's a little tip rat. I don't like him, but I am man enough to admit that he's a very good footballer and probably one of the all-time great small forwards. He's kicked over 570 goals, played 250 plus games. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's certainly one player that we will miss in the competition. I feel that's well known around the community, football community, that Stephen Milne is a terrific footballer, talented footballer. He's got the most goals at Etihad Stadium, which is a terrific feat. And he's going to be sorely missed, not just by the St Kilda faithful, but the rest of the football community.
And we can't move on without at least giving a quick mention to Jude Bolton, an absolute legend of the Sydney Football Club. Dual premiership player, I do believe. I don't actually have the stats in front of me. but an amazing tackler and a brilliant player for the club.
The all-time highest tackles he has on record.
Wow.
The number one player in history who has had the most tackles.
I think he also holds the record for the most tackles in a single game as well.
I think he does, yeah. So, as it stands, he's played 321 games, and by the end of it, could possibly be a triple premiership player. I believe he did play in 2005.
2005 he would have, I think.
Yeah, because he wore that helmet after getting a very heavy knock and came back on and wore that helmet to avoid any more damage. And of course, last season as well, where he played a big part in the Swans winning their second flag in 7 years. So he's been a terrific servant of that football club, and not only that football club, but the AFL in general. Anyone who plays over 300 games certainly deserves every recognition that they get from around the competition.
And moving on, it's everyone's favourite segment, the toast and roast. We've all got something that has well and truly pissed us off this week. So we'll join in on the roast, but we'll each do a toast. I'll kick it off. My toast this week is Stephen Motlop, absolute superstar of the Geelong Football Club. He's an excitement machine. The game against Sydney on the weekend, he took an amazing mark, could possibly be mark of the year. And when you see a mark like that, a lot of the time the player will come back and they'll spray the set shot on goal, but he slotted it, and we went absolutely nuts for him. So my roast goes to Stephen Motlop this week.
Vinay, what about you, mate? What's your toast this week?
My toast is a man from Fremantle who I wouldn't say has been going under the radar because he does get quite a bit of recognition, but he's just an absolute star. Nathan Fife of the Fremantle Football Club. This kid is so good. Every time I watch him, he does something just magnificent. He's been coming quite a bit over the season just because he's number one in the AFL for clangers at the moment. But he's also in the top 5 for contested possessions. And obviously, you've always got to look at clangers or disposal efficiency concurrently with the amount of contested ball. But this guy can just do everything. He kicked 4 goals earlier in the season. He averages, I think, 1 contested mark per game. Which none of the other Freo midfielders do. He works hard. He's only 22 years old as well. I just really think he has a really bright future ahead of him. And I tell you what, he gets my toast this week.
Yeah, good call. Fife is having a very good season, and I'd be very surprised if he's not in the All-Australian side come the end of the year. Boys, my toast, I'm steering away from the football again just before we move on to our roast, collective roast. Ryan Harris from the Australian cricket team. If you'd watch my Twitter, I am a massive, massive fan of the Big Rhino. I said probably months before the Ashes series started that if Australia was any chance of winning, Ryan Harris had to play in the first test to set the tone. Now, he didn't play in the first test, unfortunately, but came in the second test and showed exactly why he is Australia's best bowler. I have no shame in saying that. He's got a very good test average. Only James Pattinson has a better test average than Ryan Harris. So he swings the ball out and in and is a very good bowler and is definitely Australia's best bowler. And if he can keep his body right and come down to Australia for the Australian tour and bowl on the quicker, faster wickets, he's going to be the leading wicket taker in the summer series. I tell you that much right now. Boys, our roast, we've all got a say on it, but just stand back because I've had enough. The AFL Commission, and when I say that, people probably think I'm going to have a go at them for handing down the Essendon penalties, which I'm not. I'm having a go at them, and we all are, about the interchange cap coming in 2014. 89% of the players in their players' survey voted against an interchange cap. It is about bloody time the AFL start listening to their players, the players that go through the strain of playing an AFL game and know how much pain their body goes through and how much recovery and training they have to do to get their body right for the next game in the next week. Interchange cap is only going to make them more sore, more tired, more injuries are going to occur. It is just what's that word, Nick?
Oh
Farcical,
no.
I think might be the
Thank you.
word.
It was
I don't want
coming.
a little I don't want a little voice break like I had last time. Um, but it's time the AFL start listening to their players because otherwise the players are going to walk away. And that's no joke. I've actually, without having a big head, I've spoke to a couple of players and they're absolutely sick of the rule changes that come through every single year. And it's time that they start listening to the players and getting their views instead of just going ahead with it. And that's a little side one to KB as well for changing the rules 90% of the time.
From a
Mate.
supporter's point of view, I can't help but think it's going to not quite ruin, but lessen the spectacle of the game. If you think what's one of the most famous moments, most enjoyable moments in recent times in footy, you think Lewis Jetta, I believe, is the Sydney one, isn't
It
it?
is,
I've
yes.
been caught out on that one before, calling him Leroy. Leroy. Lewis Jetta running away from Cyril Rioli on the wing in the grand final. Things like that. If a player has been on the ground for the last 30 minutes because he can't rotate, that's just not going to happen. We're not going to see a player like sprint away from his opponent. We're not going to see big ruckman chase down midfielders. It's these things are just going to disappear from our game.
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned, Nick, we definitely won't see any massive chases like that. We might see a few players limp after each other or just crawl after one another, but I'm not sure the possibility of big rundowns. But I agree totally. I've heard that. I remember Gary Ablett once saying that no footballer ever plays with their body 100%. So that says a lot. The fact that that's just the real amount of physical strain that they go through. And it just seems like the AFL is looking at what the players want and then doing the exact opposite. So that's that. I don't know whether that speaks about the AFL or whether it speaks about the Players Association not doing enough. But really, it's disappointing. I'm not a fan of this either. So good call, guys.
Lift you
Boys,
get.
but just before we move on, I've just clicked onto the AFL website and something that's just slipped past us. The AFL are in discussions of a representative game, which is fantastic to hear. The top of the article just reads here: representative football is likely to replace the NAB Cup Grand Final next year after sweeping changes were made to the structure of the 2014 AFL season. The exact form of the game is not yet to be determined, whether with either an all-star or state of origin format possible. This is fantastic for football. It's a second toast if it happens. This is really good to see that they're at least discussing the option of it coming into the 2014 season because it's just players are screaming to be um, to represent some kind of origin that they have, whether it's um, Victoria or Australia or some way they're dying to play representative football. And we saw earlier in the year with the state of origin in the rugby league that it doesn't get any bigger than that really. The players, Billy Slater's been on record saying that a state of origin win is just as good as a premiership. So for a player to say that,
Wow.
exactly, they thrive on uh, representing their origin. So it's good to see that they are at least discussing it.
Well,
Good
boys,
call.
let's get
Good.
into round 23, the final round of the season. First game of the round is Sydney versus Hawthorn at ANZ Stadium. This game will probably decide who finishes on top out of Hawthorn and Geelong. It's going to be a massive game. What are your thoughts on it, guys?
Yeah, I'm not sure Hawthorn's played a game at ANZ Stadium from memory. I'll stand corrected if you want to send a comment in later, but I'll stand corrected if they have. But from memory, I don't think they have played a game at ANZ Stadium, so it'll be interesting to see how they adapt to the surface. It's well known that the surface at ANZ Stadium is not a very good one, so it'll be a cracking contest either way.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to it. As I said, massive repercussions from this game. Sydney, I believe they are still a slim chance to finish third position. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just checking that. Yes, they are still a slim
They are.
chance
Yep.
to if Fremantle slip up this week, which obviously is looking unlikely. Um, but on the Hawthorn and Geelong side of it, if Hawthorn win, they'll finish on top. And if they lose, assuming Geelong beats Brisbane at Simmons Stadium, then Geelong will finish on top. Massive, massive game. A few people have suggested Hawthorn doesn't want to play Sydney 2 weeks in a row. And if Hawthorn win, that'll happen. So if Hawthorn do win, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the qualifying final the week after with the teams just coming off a game against each other.
Just before we get to Juvenile, just quickly, they have played one game at ANZ Stadium and got comprehensively beaten. So, yeah. Juvenile, your thoughts?
Look, I'm probably going to have to tip the Hawks. Watching Sydney last week, obviously take nothing from Geelong. They were spectacular, but Sydney just didn't seem like the usual Sydney that they are. And obviously they've incurred a few injuries. Reece Shaw's gone down. Dan Hanbury has already been ruled out for this week. As opposed to the SCG, I can't see the Swans having as big an advantage at ANZ Stadium. I'm just going to have to say the Hawks. They look so damaging. I mean, against North Melbourne, they were obviously they seemed to just be labouring for about a half a footy, and then they just switched on, and North looked helpless. They were just outdone. So Hawthorn for me, guys, to get over Sydney over there at ANZ.
And as you were mentioning there, Sydney looking a bit flat. Josh and I talked a couple of weeks ago in the podcast about Sydney looking a bit one-dimensional with Kurt Tippett up forward.
Yep,
and
definitely.
I think that really shone through. I saw that firsthand on Saturday night with Kurt Tippett up my end of the ground. Harry Taylor, he destroyed him. Like the first 5 minutes of the game, Tippett had a real big impact, and it was looking really worrying. But after that, Harry Taylor and Tom Lonergan at times really kept him really kept him under control, and Sydney just didn't have any other option other than that. They were bombing it into the 50. Harry Taylor would spoil it, and that was the end of their ideas there. So they really do need to find a working structure that doesn't just have Kurt Tippett at the head of the attack.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's a bit ironic because obviously, as you mentioned, they have developed a bit of Tippett syndrome, but prior to Tippett actually playing, Sydney had one of the best sort of forward structures going around in the sense that they had so many different goal kickers. I mean, it wasn't uncommon to see guys like Kennedy or Jack or McVeigh go forward and kick a few. But now you look at last week, Kennedy kicked none, McVeigh had none, Jack had none, Tom Mitchell, who's been known to kick a few, had none. Hanbury just had the one, and then he was injured for a bit. So their whole going forward structure has really changed, and it seems to be negatively impacting them because when Tippett doesn't get up and going, as you mentioned, when he's got a solid defender on him like Harry Taylor, the Swans are struggling to find an avenue to goal.
So, guys, tipping a margin?
I'll be tipping the Hawks. I'm not overly confident, but tipping the Hawks just by about 10 points.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Josh, but probably not quite that close. I think Sydney were comprehensively undone, and I'm not sure they can come back this week. So I'm going to say Hawthorn by 22 points.
Yep, I'll agree with Nick there in the sense that it won't be that close. I feel that Geelong, they kicked a lot of behinds last week. It would have been interesting to see what happened if they'd kicked a bit straighter. But yeah, I'm going to go Hawthorn by about 20.
Moving on, the next game of the round is St Kilda versus Fremantle at Etihad Stadium. What are your thoughts on this one, guys?
Yeah, the three retirees for the Saints, we spoke about them earlier, Stephen Milne, Justin Tajicki and Jason Blake. The Saints will want to send them off in a good way, and they got a good win last week as well. Nick Rewalt was absolutely sensational, taking 15 marks and kicking 4 goals. He was absolutely on fire. Stephen the Tit Rat Realm kicked for himself as well, so he's hitting a good patch of form just before he goes out on retirement. The Fremantle side, I said at the start of the year, Nick, as soon as we started doing the podcast, that Fremantle needed to fix their forward structure. And the last 4 weeks, they have comprehensively beaten their opponent, including Port Adelaide, who is in the top 8 as we speak. Still, I think I'm waiting for Fremantle to do that against a really good side. Not saying that Port Adelaide are not, but I'd like to see them do it against a Hawthorn, Geelong, Sydney, or Collingwood before I'm convinced that they are a premiership threat. I just don't think. I still don't think that they can win the premiership coming up against the better defensive sides.
Yeah,
I'll take.
last week. Sorry,
No,
Vinay.
it's all right. Go
Last
ahead,
week
mate.
they were very good against Port Adelaide. Hayden Valentine, sorry, and Matthew Pavlich
Hayden
kicking
Pavlich.
kicking 4 goals, one each. Sonny Walters as well, chipping in with three.
Oh,
Um,
son.
Sun.
Son, yeah.
They've had absolutely no mercy in their games against Port Adelaide, not so much, but you could call them the lesser teams they've played recently. They've really pushed on and buried them. What were your thoughts, Vinay?
Yeah, I was going to say that I was having a look at their history. The last time the Saints played the Dockers at Etihad, Justin Kazitsky was the leading goal scorer with 3, and the time before that, again at Etihad, Stephen Milne was the leading goal kicker with 4. So I don't know, it's a bit eerie, but unfortunately for Saints, I don't think they'll get over the line just because I've been really impressed with Fremantle. Love to see Milne and Kazitsky go out on a high note, but I don't think that high note will be a win. So I'm going to say Freo by quite a bit.
Just a couple of quick stats that are quite outstanding, really. Ross Lyon has played 11 matches at Etihad Stadium as Fremantle coach and has won all of them. So he's 11-0 at the ground. And if Fremantle are in front at three-quarter time, they will not lose, guaranteed, because, again, Ross Lyon has never coached a side that has lost after leading at three-quarter time.
That really is a testament at how well he coaches a defensive mindset into his players.
And that's including his time at St Kilda as well. So it's a fair it's a fair record to have.
So guys, tip and a margin.
Yeah, I'll be tipping the Dockers quite comfortably, unfortunately, for Saints fans and the trio that are heading out of our game. I just think the Dockers will really want to stamp their authority on the game. Heading into next week's final series, I'll be tipping the Dockers by a comfortable. Oh, it's not going to be pretty. 80 points.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Actually, Fremantle in amazing form at the moment, and St Kilda they're third last on the ladder, I believe. So Fremantle by 76 points. Vinay?
Oh, wow. Alrighty. Not much love for the Saints. But, yeah, look, Freo will definitely win comfortably, but I think Saints might. They put up a good fight last week against Gold Coast and proved a lot of people wrong. I think Freo will win, but I'm going to say by about 40 points.
Moving on, it's Geelong, my boys, versus the Brisbane Lions at Simmons Stadium. Brisbane got over the Cats in a famous victory at the Gabba earlier in the season. Guys, do we think they can do it again this week?
Short answer, no. Sorry, Brisbane fans, but yeah, I know I probably said the same thing when you first played them up at the Gabba, but Simmons Stadium is a whole different story. And just before a final series, there'll be players playing for their spots, including one Paul Chapman. Will be playing for his spot. Yeah, I can't see Brisbane getting anywhere near the Cats.
Brisbane are probably they're one of the well, they're equal with points on Carlton, but they've got a terrible percentage. So they are one of those 5 teams that does have a chance of sneaking into 8th position or 9th position, as we've been calling it for a very long time. But Geelong, they were scary good against Sydney. I was very proud with the way they played, and they're in great form at the moment. They've put together 3 or 4 four-quarter performances in a row. So Geelong quite comfortably. How about yourself, Vinay?
I think this could get very ugly, boys. I'm looking at it here, and the last 5 times Brisbane have played Geelong, 4 of those times have been at the Gabba, much to the fortune of the Brisbane Lions. And yeah, look, the Cats are in absolutely just destructive form. Joel Selwood, I don't think anyone can stop this guy except himself at the moment. And he's flying, he's kicking goals, he's getting his hands on the ball, he's tackling like a madman. And Brisbane will be hard-pressed to avoid getting absolutely, I think, me-taxed down there at Skill. So
Me-taxed?
Yeah, it's a new one. I think, yeah, they'd be lucky not to get absolutely Brody Grundied down there. So
that doesn't sound pretty for Brisbane fans. Just on Joel Selwood, as you mentioned, I think if he has a good performance this weekend, there's a sneaky chance you can call him Charlie after that. So
Ooh. just
there's a sneaky little prediction for you.
just to put things into perspective, if the Brisbane Lions do somehow pull off a miracle and beat the Cats down at Simmons Stadium, they will still need to beat Geelong pretty comfortably to elevate themselves into a top 8 position. They'll need Carlton to be absolutely walloped by Port Adelaide and roles reversed for Brisbane to hammer Geelong. So it's looking very, very unlikely for the Brisbane Lions to secure a finals berth. But at least they're in the hunt. So we'll predict the other teams in contention as we move along. As we say that, boys, the next game is... what's the next game, guys?
Sorry, guys, tip it a margin before we move on.
Oh, yes, of course. Geelong by... Oh,
This will be fun.
give me a number between 60 and 120. That's how ugly I think it could get. I'll go 85 points.
Yeah, I'm going to go Geelong just too good this week, so I'm going to go Geelong by 70 points.
Yep, agree with you guys. If Brisbane lose by anything less than 40, that's pretty good for them. I think Geelong by 96.
Next game of the round is Port Adelaide versus Carlton. This game was looking like a
Big
massive
game.
Well, it was looking like a massive blockbuster for different reasons, but Carlton versus Port Adelaide. Now it's Carlton versus 4 other sides for that 8th spot on the ladder. What are your thoughts on it, guys?
It's obviously still a must-win for Carlton to play finals. If they lose, they all of a sudden become vulnerable. I think Carlton will be really, really devastated at their loss last week to the Bombers. They had that game sewn up and allowed Essendon back into the game. I just want to give a little bit of criticism to Mark Murphy. I watched him really, really closely last week, and his defensive pressure was non-existent, and he had this problem earlier in the year, and it looked like he fixed it for a couple of weeks. But I watched him very, very closely last week, and it's fair to say he really, really struggled with that defensive pressure. And as a captain, you need to be able to lead from the front in that aspect. And I just thought, I don't want to call him soft because he's not, but he seemed to play a lot of bruise-free football, and that's something he needs to fix as a captain. And I'm sure Coach Mick Malthouse would point that out to him.
Something I've noticed during the week and what I mentioned just before, I can't find any... Obviously, you want the best form possible coming into finals, but there's no real incentive for Port Adelaide to win this game. They can't go up, they can't go down. No amount of massive win or massive defeat will affect their position on the ladder. What motivation will Port Adelaide have to win this game, or do they put their worst 22 players on the park and come into finals as fresh as possible?
I think you've got to play your best 22 possible, especially heading into a final series. To say they haven't got anything to play for is probably right, but we can't forget that it's their final game at Amy Stadium, so a ground that they have a lot of history at. So I think you can expect Port Adelaide to come out and put in a pretty good performance because, to be honest, I didn't see much of the game, but from all reports last week, they were pretty horrible against Fremantle. So you don't want to head into a final series with 2 heavy losses and coming up against someone like a Collingwood or a Richmond. You want to play your best side possible, gel together, and make as limited changes as possible heading into a final series.
Yeah, and on that, I think obviously Port's last game at Amy Stadium, they're bringing back the old jail bar jersey to wear this week, the prison bar ones. And they're, I think last week, it should be said that Freo, they sort of took their foot off the pedal, Port Adelaide. Chad Wingard was subbed out relatively early, and that it really suggested their mindset to me, I felt, just the fact that they subbed out one of their best players. I think Port just want to get to finals at the moment. They're in that sort of a mindset. But having said that, the fact that it is their last game at Amy, and no incentive. Maybe they don't like Carlton and don't want to see them around in September. But yeah, I suppose hopefully we see them come out and really give Carlton, make them earn it.
So, guys, who are you tipping this week?
I'm going to tip the Power. I just think Carlton's confidence from last week might be a little bit shot. A lot of pressure's on them, and they don't particularly play well under pressure. And people might just be thinking I'm saying that because I don't like them, and it's half true, but it's not fully true. It's well known that they don't play well under pressure as of late. And I just think the pressure might be too big for them. Being in Amy Stadium, I think Port Adelaide might get the chocolates by about 23 points.
Yeah, as I said before, it's a difficult one to tip because you don't know what kind of effort Port Adelaide will come out with. But having said that, I do think they will win. They were comprehensively beaten last week. Coming into the final series, you want the best form possible. Port Adelaide by 18 points.
I think there is an epidemic, boys, down there at the Carlton Footy Club. I'm not sure if it's in the water or if it's just the air they breathe, but I'm telling you what, bruise-free football, as Josh said it, has just taken the Carlton players by the throat and crammed itself down the windpipe of those players. Because it's not just Mark Murphy, but Bryce Gibbs, guys like Eddie Betts, although he is a small forward, but they are starting him in the midfield now for some reason. They are really just sitting on the outside of the pack and expecting someone to go in, which is where I think Brock McLean has really shone. The fact that he's just been willing to put his nose over it. But they've got real talent down there. But Gibbs and Murphy, they need to up their contested ball getting because it's just not been good enough for their standard. And I agree with Josh. I think Port will get up just because they've got a really good fan base down there. And they are just a very good side. Well, not very good. I use that term loosely, but they're a good side. I think they'll get up there. And Amy.
Possibly a bad batch of Powerade have Vinay. Shout out to our good friends at the Coca-Cola Company for their exceptional Powerade making.
Our next game, guys, is the Essendon versus Richmond game. Effectively, in quotes, the dead rubber game. Boys, what do we think of this one?
Well, Vinay and I are actually commentating this one. We might have a bit of fun with this.
Yeah, I don't think it's a dead rubber at all. I'm really looking forward to Saturday night to get in the box with Nick and call this. But to be honest, this is one of the games that's interesting me the most this week. I'm really, really keen to see how Essendon play, just to see the character of the side after such a torrid sort of week. I'm really looking forward to it.
Josh will help me out here, but we've seen them. There's been quite a few performances this season when, after a week like this one that they've had, they've come out and under, against all odds, under massive pressure, they've come out with the win by very small margins and to massive applause from their fans. So this could be another week like that where they really, really show the competition what they've got to offer.
I really think, boys, that this game could go two ways. I think one, it's Richmond's win and a big win. But the other way is an Essendon big win.
Yep.
I just feel that earlier in the year, the Bombers really strangled Richmond, didn't allow them to play their attacking, free-flowing game that they like to play. Delidio didn't have an impact, Cochrane didn't have an impact, Dustin Martin didn't have an impact. So I really feel that this game could go two ways, and I'm really hoping it's the way that Essendon win, but I just don't see a close game in this at all. I think it's going to be a big win to either side, which is strange to say, really, because I don't know which side that's going to be, and it's just mainly saying that which Essendon is going to turn up. Is it going to be the side that was so good in the first half of the year and played some of the best football we've seen this season, or is it going to be the side that really struggled for a month and showed signs that the Insata investigation started to get a bit tiring and stuff like that. So it's a hard one, but I can't see this being a close game either way.
Vinay, what are your thoughts?
I can definitely understand Josh's logic, and I'd probably have to agree with it. It's just the week that's passed, it's either going to be Essendon coming out just absolutely breathing fire and they're just going to come out and roll the Tigers, or Richmond are just going to just finish off sort of Essendon's season, put them out of their misery, and really finish them off. But I honestly reckon Essendon will get up, and I can say that confidently, actually, with a bit of confidence, because I don't know, it's just something about the Essendon Football Club, the spirit that they have. We could see how happy they were after beating Carlton, even though probably most of them had an idea of what was coming. You could see how much it meant to them. So I think this goes beyond finals. I think it goes beyond a dead rubber, as many people might label it. I think Essendon do have something to play for, and the players know that, and I think they'll get up.
So, Josh, who are you tipping?
I don't know. Come back to me.
I'll be going for Richmond. Essendon, there's signs that they possibly could, as Vinay said, come out with a big win. But Richmond, I can't help but feel they're the better team and the better form at the moment. So Richmond by 8 points.
I'm going to say Essendon by 19.
Josh?
Oh,
He still doesn't know.
I still don't know.
Want us to go around and come back to you again?
No, stuff it. I'm going with me heart. I'm going the Bombers. And I think it'll be a big win. Excess of 6 goals. 39 points.
You'll be there, won't you, Josh?
I will, mate. So
It'll be great to see the Bombers get up.
hopefully, and just a quick memo to all Essendon fans: attend the game. I've seen a lot of supporters suggest that they'll boycott this game to stick it up the backside of the AFL. You're only hurting your club, guys. Get to the game, support the boys. The players need us more than anything at this time. So get to the game. Really show your support for the team as we have all year, and let's see what has been a terrific year on the field out and come back bigger, stronger, and better in 2014.
And moving on to the last game on Saturday night, it's West Coast versus Adelaide at Patterson Stadium, a game which could also have some massive ramifications for possible finals campaigns. What are your thoughts on it, guys?
Yeah, just looking at the ladder, and as I said earlier, that we'll go through each team that can make the finals. Adelaide and West Coast are both in contention themselves. Adelaide themselves are probably in the better position than West Coast. For what needs to happen for the Adelaide Crows is North Melbourne to lose to Collingwood, Brisbane to lose to Geelong, and Carlton to lose to Port Adelaide by about 5 to 6 goals, and for Adelaide to win by about 5 to 6 goals themselves. So it's a realistic chance.
It's a long checklist.
Yeah, it'll take some doing and relying on other teams to win it / lose. And for the Eagles, they're probably in a similar position, but probably need Port Adelaide to win by 8 goals and themselves to win by 8 goals. So it certainly is a chance for both sides. It's just a matter of how much they want it.
What are your thoughts, Vinay?
Look, to be honest, neither of these sides really deserve to play finals. I think if you're looking at the sides that would actually pose some kind of interesting challenge come September, you'd have to look at either Carlton or North Melbourne. But these two and Brisbane seem to be just the other sides that have just sort of found themselves in this situation where, all of a sudden we're in finals contention. But look, I think West Coast has had a terrible season. Adelaide's been pretty poor as well. It's at Patterson's, and that's the only reason I'm going to back West Coast, although Patterson Stadium hasn't really proved much of an advantage for them this year. I just think the Eagles, they beat Adelaide over at Amy earlier in the year, but that was a sort of a final minute goal from Josh Kennedy that saved them. But yeah, look, I think the Eagles will win this. It could potentially be John Worsfold's last game, and I think the playing group will be aware of that, the fact that he could be done. So Eagles for me, guys.
Josh, who are you tipping?
Yeah, I'll be tipping. I think Adelaide. I think they're just no offense for no, but
No, that's
just
fine, mate. Go for your heart. Yeah.
I just think Adelaide might be in the better form at the moment. West Coast have struggled the last 2 weeks. So yeah, I think Adelaide might get up by about 3-4 goals. They'll go 20 points.
Yeah, I've actually made a last minute decision here. I was West Coast all week, but listening to you guys and having a look at the ladder here, I can't help but think West Coast have 100% put the Q in the rack. I'm going to say Adelaide by 23 points. Vinay?
Yeah, fair enough. First of all, I hate you both. No, all good. But yeah, no, I can appreciate what you're saying. West Coast has sort of just gone to sleep already. But I'm still going to stick with them. I just think that at Patterson's, and also the fact that it could be Woosh's last game, might just see them hobble over the line. I'm going to go West Coast by about 10.
10. Oh, massive
Yep.
game there. Moving on, it's another blockbuster, probably match of the round. I think you'd all agree. It's Gold Coast versus GWS at Metricon Stadium.
Oh, wow. Drum roll, please.
40,000 at Metricon Stadium, I'm sure. I'm not sure they even have that many seats. What are your thoughts, guys?
Boys, I think we should just make mention of Kevin Sheedy's last game
Oh, of
as
course.
coach.
Yep, yep.
He's unlikely to return in any way, shape, or form as a coach, which is sad to see. Being at the Bombers for such a long time, for 27 years, is just a fantastic achievement that I find it hard to see it ever be broken. To spend 27 years at one club, four premierships, a number of finals appearance, a lot of controversy that he's brought up. The famous jacket waving, the marshmallows, the slitting of the throat to Mitchell White. It just goes on, and I just think we're losing a great person, despite what many people say. He's very outspoken. I just think we're losing a great person who's been fantastic to the football community.
In regards to this week's game, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't see the Giants getting up. It's funny, if the Giants win, there's a very good chance that Melbourne could eventually end up on the bottom of the ladder. So the Giants are still a realistic chance of getting off the bottom. Unfortunately, I cannot see them beating the Gold Coast Suns. The Suns will want to finish their season off with a bang. They'll most likely finish with 8 wins if they get a win against the Giants. I've been really impressed with Dion Prestia this year from the Gold Coast Suns. His year's been fantastic. The human meatball, as our friend BT likes to call him. So he's been fantastic, flown under the radar of the likes of Gary Ablett and first year player Yago Mira. So he's been super. GWS, Jeremy Cameron, can he get that Coleman medal? It looks unlikely now, but either way, he's been absolutely fantastic this year, kicking 60 goals. Was held goalless by Alex Vance last week, so he'll be keen to bounce back this week against the Gold Coast Suns.
I'm going to
Yeah.
say, sorry, Vinay, I'm going to
No,
say
go ahead, mate. Sorry about that. Yep.
Gold Coast by 35 points this week. GWS, last game of the season, they'll put in that extra bit of effort and make it a little bit closer than a lot of people might think. So Gold Coast by 35.
I think Kevin Sheedy, he's probably actually my favourite coach. He's such a character in and on and off the field. He's like, you watch him in interviews, he always has this sort of carefree nature about him. He's just got so much experience, and he's just one of those guys that everyone loves, I think, in the AFL community. So it is sad to see him leave after so long. But having said that, I don't think the Giants will give him as good a send-off as they could by winning. Gold Coast should win this. They've had a pretty good season. They've really shown that they're a side that's not just an easy beat anymore. So I think they'll cap off a good season and overcome the Giants by about 5 goals.
Yeah, I'll be tipping the Gold Coast Suns by about 45 points, I think. Just too strong at Metricon, and they'll want to finish the season on 8 wins, which is a massive improvement from their previous 2 years. Boys, let's quickly move on because we're running out of time here. It's Collingwood and North Melbourne. For mine, probably the game of the round, and that's including Sydney versus Hawthorn.
Big call there.
It is. It has so much riding on the line. Collingwood will want to get that fifth spot, which they hold right now, and hold that and play against either Carlton or potentially play against North Melbourne again. If North Melbourne beat Collingwood and Carlton lose to Port Adelaide, then North Melbourne's in with a greater percentage. So it has a lot on the line for North Melbourne, and that you can guarantee that they'll come out firing in this game. They especially have struggled with the big teams in the past, but this year and last year probably have rectified that a bit, beating Geelong twice. They've beaten Collingwood, taken it up to Hawthorn, except that dropping down in Tasmania. Boys, I think North Melbourne are a chance in this game.
I thought North Melbourne were a massive chance against Hawthorn, and it's sort of a similar feeling this week. And they came very close to Hawthorn for three quarters. With what's on stake for North Melbourne, you can't help but think they were going to make this a massive contest and be very close the whole way through. And as you said, Josh, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if they won.
I'd agree with you both there. North Melbourne, it just seems like any team they play, they seem like they're a good chance. They're just one of those sides that seems to be good at knocking off the top sides. So I think this is a big game for both clubs, but I can't see Collingwood losing just because they're in good form. We saw what they did to West Coast last week. It was just cold-blooded murder, and I think, yeah, at the G, Swan, Pendlebury, Beams all running around with Cloak up forward. North don't have Petrie, Swallow, and Scott Thompson or Nathan Grimer, some huge names out. So Magpies for me.
Yeah, I'll be tipping. I want to tip North Melbourne, but the game's at the MCG, and I just can't go past Collingwood at the G. If the game was at Etihad, I'd have no hesitation in picking North Melbourne in this game. But because of the venue, Collingwood play this ground so well because they play most of their games there
Most of
throughout the
the games
season.
there.
So I'll be tipping Collingwood, not by much, but yeah, North Melbourne a big chance if they bring their A game. We're tipping Collingwood by about 9 points.
As you said, if this game was at Etihad, I'd probably tip North Melbourne by 4 or 5 goals. But at the MCG, Collingwood by 25 points. Vinay?
Yep, I'm going to go Collingwood by about 15 points, guys.
Final game of the round, final home and away game of the season is Western Bulldogs and Melbourne at Etihad Stadium at 4:40 on Sunday. Guys, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I can't see the Demons winning this game. They managed to beat the Bulldogs early in the year, but the Bulldogs just look like a different side at the moment. They should finish the season on 8 wins, which at the start of the season you wouldn't have said that, and look likely to just fall inside the top bottom four, which most predicted at the start of the year, but not many predicted that they'd have likely 8 wins at the end of the season, which is a fantastic achievement
It's actually
for the
very
Western Bulldogs.
That's actually very surprising to hear when you think about it. The Western Bulldogs ending up in the bottom four after the last month or 2 months that they've had, bringing it up to some really good sides and getting some massive wins over some quality opposition. So it's actually very surprising to hear how low they will finish.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's sort of testament to the competitiveness of all the sides in the AFL. I wouldn't say all, but those barring the bottom four. I mean, the fact that you do have the Bulldogs in the four says quite a lot about clubs like Gold Coast, who I think everyone probably would have said they'd be a ticket for the bottom four at the start of the season. But Bulldogs, yeah, I think don't read too much into that bottom four because they are a good side at the moment.
And possibly pushing for finals next season with the kind of form they're showing at the moment. I know that's a big call, but definitely not out of the question. Guys, what are your tips this week?
Yeah, before I give my tip, we should make a quick mention of Melbourne. It's been a absolute horror season for them, and I know many of their supporters are really looking forward to this game because at the end of it, it means the season's over, and they can all go on Mad Monday. So,
It's a bit harsh.
well, it's not me saying it, mate. It's their supporters. So, it really has been a horror year, and they really cannot wait to put this year behind them, start afresh, get a fit Mitch Clark in, get Jesse Hogan in. You could build a side around that kid, Jesse Hogan. I've watched him in the VFL this season, and he is nothing short of a young gun. And I don't use that word very often on young players, but this kid is everything that they say he is.
Is he an all-time great, Josh?
No, I won't go that far, not
He's
yet.
not quite there yet.
But he has the physique of a young Jonathan Brown, and if he turns out half as good as him, the Demons have a very, very good forward on their hands. So, Demons fans, it's almost over, but still get to Etihad Stadium and see your boys. You've been fantastic throughout this year. Still getting along to the games and supporting your club, which is fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to end as well as you would have hoped. The Bulldogs are just in fine form at the moment. I'll be tipping them by 72 points.
Yeah, wow, that's big margin there. But Western Bulldogs are in very good form at the moment. They'll be very confident of coming away with the 4 points this week, and I think they'll do just that to the tune of 45 points. Vinay?
I think the Demons have quite literally had the season from hell. They've had injuries left, right, and centre. Their coach has been given the heave-ho. Been a bit of a leadership issue, as there has been ever since Trengove got appointed. But look, yeah, their season's almost at an end, and I think for that they should be grateful, just that they can get a fresh start. Jesse Hogan, I have heard quite a bit about him, and from what Josh has said, I'm really keen to see him next season. But not to be for the Melbourne Football Club on the weekend. Western Bulldogs by about 50 points for me.
Righto, lads. Well, that's another podcast done. It's been a fantastic edition. I really enjoyed having you on, Vinay. You were fantastic, and I'm sure we will hear more from you with your commentary and live Q&A every now and then. As we say that, we're about to do one, so which is great. Nick, thanks for joining us as well. We'll see you next week for the finals. And
Looking forward to that one.
We'll start reviewing the teams that aren't in the finals. We'll start doing that next week in their season, and which players might be on the outer and moving clubs or may not be playing AFL again next season. So thanks for joining us, guys. It's been fantastic, and we'll speak to you next week. Make sure you like us on Facebook as well, our Twitter as well. Vinay, do you have Twitter, mate?
No, I don't, mate. I might have to make one soon, though.
But, But give
Sounds
poor
good,
old Nick a follow, because he's got 88 followers or something. It's a little bit sad. So
Yeah, I think I'm falling behind on the social media. So yeah, I'll try and get one up and going, mate.
Yeah, make sure you follow me as well, and get me 2,700 ahead of Nick. So
just one quick mention before we finish up. Vinay and I and a couple of others who help out with the page used to write the articles for their respective sites. We'll be doing some live commentary on Friday night for Sydney vs Hawthorn and Saturday night for Essendon vs Richmond, which certainly won't be as much of a dead rubber as people think. So look out for those.
yeah, so looking forward to that, guys. Unfortunately, I can't be a part of that due to prior commitments, but it's been fantastic having you both. Really enjoyed it. We'll see you next week for what is going to be a massive final series. Go Bombers!
Go Cats!
Go Eagles.